Hello, everyone. This is Sal Albanese. Welcome to another edition of Running Against the Wind. My guest today is one of the leading grassroots activists around environmental issues in New York City, Pete Sikora, who has been on the forefront of taking on politicians and not pulling any punches when it comes to the climate change issues that are facing the city and indeed the world. And unfortunately, a lot of people are not fully educated on the impact of this stuff on their lives and the lives of their children and others into the future, especially around New York City. So, Pete, welcome. Let me start by
Right.
asking you how do you get involved with environmental issues? What's your background?
I'm like not like a nature guy. To start, I'm from here, New York City. I grew up in Washington Heights and I needed a summer job. And so I got one canvassing door to door and raising money for an environmental group, New Jersey Perg. And there I learned like you can really make a difference as an individual on public interest causes. Before that I was sort of like a snarky, know too much kid who read the newspaper, thought they knew everything. But I learned you actually can make a difference. And so I got into it. And then from there, I just continued to do a lot of student activist stuff and then uh, went into a career in advocacy and organizing work.
It's fantastic. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Cornell and in high school, I went to Fieldston, which is like this nice prep school in Riverdale.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it was nice.
it's great to have somebody with your background advocating for good government and a clean environment. Most people with your background go into finance or
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, they do.
they're making a ton of money, and you're out there on the ground with your background and experience making a difference.
No, that's nice of you to say. I was like kind of a giant dork in high school. I sort of felt a little bit out of place among a lot of kids who were from a different background. And it's like you say, a lot of people go in that kind of a elite path. I was like a middle class kid, but a lot of people go on to like finance and law and not necessarily the most wonderful things for the world.
Yeah. So we were just talking about your background and how you got involved with climate change and taking on politicians directly, which a lot of people are afraid to do. Obviously, let's talk about the pressing issues facing New York City because I follow you on X and you point out a lot of the environmental problems that we're facing as a city, and you also point out how to mitigate it. So, what are the pressing issues facing New York City in terms of environmental issues?
I don't separate out the huge climate change challenge we face from the challenges of inequality in this city. Um, Poor people of color are getting clobbered by a lack of good jobs, lack of health care, lack of education, all of those things. And meanwhile, here comes climate change, which is going to make about 30% of this city chronically flood in the coming decades on the current path. Think of that, 30% of this city underwater a lot of the time. What is that going to do to people's ability to pay the rent? It's going to shoot rents up. It's going to make a bad situation already much, much worse. So, in order to fight climate change, we've got to radically reduce pollution. And that is a big challenge. But at the same time, it's a huge opportunity to create large numbers of good jobs and reduce utility bills by going to clean energy and energy efficiency. So that's the way we see it. And of course, like you said, there's big special interests and politicians who are interested in protecting the status quo as opposed to making that sort of a shift.
Yeah, that's why I'm a fan of yours. I don't agree with everything, but you're taking on a system which promotes inequality and obviously interests that are making a lot of money, conflicted cash. They want to maintain the status quo and obviously create a more difficult life for average New Yorkers. Talk about some of the mitigating issues that you've been involved in, like Local Law 97. When was it passed? And I hear I hear folks, just average people who really aren't that well versed in the law, saying how expensive it's going to be for average folks, condo owners that are middle class, working class folks. Wealthy people will not mind the expense, they're saying, but it's going to impact people who live in large um, middle class, working class housing, and how that's going to increase their um, their expenditures, making life more difficult for them. That's the argument that I hear on the street. So tell us about the law and whether these people are right or wrong in terms of affordability.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working for New York Communities for Change, and we're a multi issue community group, came out of Acorn. So we're very concerned with housing costs and the city's affordability. So we're not interested in pushing for or passing a law that would actually raise our own members' housing expenses. Nor, frankly, could we have been able to pass such a law through the city council and the mayor with the real estate lobby and the landlord lobby opposing it the way that they did. In fact, what the law does is it sets pollution caps that started in 2024. They're 5 year long, they're annual pollution caps. Every 5 years, those caps decline all the way down to zero in 2050. And that's a manageable path for a building to chart out how to get off fossil fuels through energy efficiency. And the nice thing about this law and energy efficiency is that it actually can create pocketbook savings because when you reduce energy waste and energy use, utility bills go down. So, for many of the buildings that are complying with Local Law 97 right now, they're saving money net of the cost of the energy efficiency improvements that they're making. That is, their savings are bigger than the costs of the financing that they're taking out to do the energy efficiency upgrade. So, that's pretty cool. That's not going to be true of every building or maybe not even most buildings. But this law does reduce utility bills and energy use. And that's a really big plus. Now, in the process of that, it also reduces pollution enormously because the amount of oil and gas use determines the amount of pollution. So if you reduce energy use, you reduce pollution.
So why would the real estate interest be opposed to it? And I recall also during the election, some people in Queens, large apartment house folks who lived in apartment houses or condo owners were, yelling and screaming about how expensive this is going to be. If this is going to lower their utility costs, it's actually a plus for them. Why would and also, of course, the environmental issues that it addresses. So why is it the real estate lobby that's kind of influencing these folks to be so against it and speak out against it?
The short answer is yes, but let me go into a little more detail because there's different actors here and it's complicated as large laws and large issues are. I'm really lucky because I don't have a financial conflict. Like I don't have any vested interest financially in either side of this issue. So I can sort of speak freely, and that's not necessarily true of like a lobbyist for the real estate industry, right? Their job is to protect the profits and the interests of the landlord lobby. And so here, those entities are bitterly opposed passage of what became Local Law 97, which was a people powered campaign. And they've been trying to roll it back ever since. And they're spending huge amounts of money to fearmonger the law on just the kind of claims that you were just talking about, that it's unaffordable, that it's impractical, that it's flawed, that it's dumb, whatever. None of that is true.
So,
So,
Pete, why are
yeah,
they doing it then? Why are they doing it?
yeah, that's a very good question. That's exactly what I was going to get into. So, for a lot of landlords and building owners, they want a return on investment for their capital that is a lot faster than what you can get with an energy efficiency project. The simple stuff like going to LEDs or like insulating exposed heating pipes, that stuff pays back in like a year. It's very, very quick, very useful, immediately saves money. But the stuff like replacing windows or insulating roofs or changing out an oil and gas boiler, those are bigger, much more expensive items. And their payback periods are going to be like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Maybe they don't even have a payback period. So the landlord lobby doesn't like that. They want to make a profit fast. Number one. Number two, it's kind of a lot of work to deal with energy efficiency and take care of the building properly. It requires thinking, it requires planning, it requires doing, and they just want the minimum effort possible. So those are two big reasons. Finally, a lot of the big owners, they're not interested in the long-term value of the building. They want to flip that thing fast. It's an in and out investment. So those are the three big reasons why kind of Rebney World, the real estate board of New York, the 800-pound gorilla of this landlord lobby world. There's other big entities and like lots of power there, but that's the big reasons why they don't like this law. I'll just say also ideologically, they really don't like to be told what to do by government. It's just like not their thing. Landlords are not like publicly spirited individuals in general. Some of the industry is, and God bless them, that's great, but that's really not typical. Most of the industry is there to maximize their profits and minimize their work.
And a lot of these large buildings, apartment houses, are owned by LLCs, right? So there's a bunch of investors that are involved, and as you said, they want a quick turnaround. They want to see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, they do not want big government public interest regulation that helps the people, not them. They don't like that sort of thing at all. Now, the co op and condo owners, that's a different bucket of people. So, in those cases, there's actually a lot of front groups that are active for the real estate lobby here, where there are people who are paid to act on behalf of the real estate lobby who nominally are co-op and condo people, but in fact it's a front group for the landlord lobby. So there's there's astroturf entities like that, and there's millions of dollars that have been spent on fear mongering to that constituency through ads, mailers, canvassers, media work. All of that is targeted to get co-op and condo owners to think, oh my God, this is something I can't deal with. I need to get a mayor or a council person to roll it back. And the reality, if you actually go to experts, is that the pollution limits are a big challenge. It's a real thing. It's not like you snap your fingers and comply, but it is achievable. It is practical. It is affordable. And the numbers are there. 92% of buildings were in compliance with the law's pollution limits that started in 2024 as of the latest public data, which was in 2023. So a year ahead of the law applying, 92% of buildings had gotten below the first pollution limit. So that pollution limit lasts from 2024 to 2029, and then it lowers in 2030. And as of 2023, 49% of multifamily buildings were already below the 2030 pollution limit. That is a big improvement since the law passed. And the pace and speed of that improvement, energy efficiency and pollution reductions in large buildings, if that continues, and we think it will, and under a Mayor Mamdani, it definitely should, there will be near 100% compliance with the pollution limits for 2030 to 2034 too. So things are actually going very, very well on the ground. And the picture that the real estate lobby is painting for political insiders and for the media and for co-op and condo owners of this big, crazy, dysfunctional law is just not real.
Well, they're once again, I'm just reacting to what I hear on the street. Obviously, they're having some success because
Totally. Absolutely.
Pete, most people don't have the knowledge that you have about this area, or even that pollution has actually declined because of some of the folks, some of the apartment houses and condos actually complying with the law. You never hear that when this is discussed. At least I don't hear it.
Well, that's because we're not spending many millions of dollars per year on a campaign to get that message out. I mean, it really is that simple.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about how crazy all this stuff is because, like, climate change was sort of an elite fashion trend for a little bit, and it seems to have sort of fallen out of the Davos crowd's sort of favor. And so, media and politicians are picking up on that. And so they're turning away from climate change as an issue. So you get a governor like Kathy Hochul, who is now opposing climate action and doing the bidding of the oil and gas industry. At the state level, there's a very big dark money campaign against a law that we helped get passed that ends gas in new construction, in new buildings. Now, guess what? We got that law passed in New York City years ago. It's been the law in New York City for years already, but
What's
there's no complaints about that. And
what's
the reason there's no complaints is because there isn't a big money, dark money effort to trash New York City's law ending gas and oil in new buildings. Instead, that money at the New York City level goes to attack local law 97. At the state level, it goes to attack the ban on gas in new construction. And so that's where the political economy and these interests start to play. And to me, it's fascinating because you never hear a complaint about the law at the city level, but at the state level, it's like controversial the way that local law 97 is at the city level, even though both are completely affordable and doable.
when you say that new buildings can't use gas, right? To
Mhm.
to heat the household or
Yeah.
the, what do they use instead? What's the alternative?
Well, so that's a great question. So you see them all over the city. It's a heat pump. What it is it's like a technology that moves heat instead of burning oil or gas to create heat. So it's way, way more energy efficient. It's like the coils in the back of your refrigerator. It moves heat in and out of the building. So if you're somebody watching this, Google's mini split heat pump an image search, you'll immediately see what I mean. It's these wide, white air conditioner looking things that hang on a wall. Those run a refrigerant line to a compressor that's outside the building, and it moves heat in and out of the building. And so a heat pump is about 3 or 4 times more energy efficient than a gas boiler. So while it runs on electricity, it uses vastly less energy than an oil or gas boiler. So that's the alternative. So the challenge, because that for the city to reduce pollution, is to reduce the pollution from oil and gas boilers. That's the top source of pollution from the city and the top opportunity to create lots of good jobs in design, renovation, and construction and reduce utility bills through energy efficiency. So to answer your question, you get a heat pump, you install heat pumps, and that's what you do to go off oil or gas.
And how effective are those heat pumps? I mean, I mean, they're as effective as what gas produces in terms of energy for the house. I mean, are they effective? These heat pumps? How effective?
Yeah, it's much nicer. It's much nicer as a product because it's much more even heating. It's like an air conditioner, but in reverse, and it produces heat as well. So it's very even as a heating technology and as a cooling technology. And you see them everywhere in restaurants. And that's how I know they're really super practical because in a real kill or be killed industry, in the restaurant industry, it's heat pumps all over restaurants. So yeah, they're nice, they're practical. I will say that in large buildings, so far, it's new to go entirely off an oil or gas boiler and onto heat pumps for a big building. That is a big transition that is something that is going to happen over the next few decades. And Local Law 97 induces that, plus lots of much simpler energy efficiency work over time. So, under the law, building owners are given a target. Here's your pollution cap, get under it. They're not told specifically how to do it. It's not like building code where it's like super, super specific. Rather, the building is given its total pollution limit, and it's up to the building to find the most cost effective way to get under that limit. So, that can be all sorts of different kinds of work. But ultimately, by 2050, it means going off oil and gas entirely, including for cooking, where you substitute induction stoves for gas stoves. And that those things also have a huge indoor air quality benefit. 20% of childhood asthma in New York City is caused by gas stoves. And running a gas stove, unfortunately, is quite a serious health threat. So yeah, so that's a added benefit of the law.
Pete, who's going to monitor that? Who's going to monitor whether a building is in compliance or not? How do we
How
do
do
that?
they do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the under Mayor Bloomberg, he actually tried to pass a law like what became Local Law 97, but he got just creamed by the real estate lobby when he tried to do it. And the compromise at that point was something called benchmarking legislation, which is public disclosure of energy use and pollution data from large buildings. And that's been in place for about 15 years now. So all large buildings covered by Local Law 97 report publicly how much pollution and energy use they have. And you can look up your building on a Local Law 97 penalty calculator if you're interested. So the reporting is there of how much pollution your building produces.
Who's
And then that reporting drives compliance because you got to get under that level.
But Pete, who's going to report? I mean, who's going? Is it self-reporting, or is it someone from the city or government monitoring the pollution levels? Are you?
Oh, it's super simple. Not almost 100% of buildings are doing this. All you do is set up automatic reporting through the utility or through an automated system. So it's very hard to game and lie about it. That is fraud and does not appear to be a widespread practice. People just set up automatic reporting.
So, how much of a difference will this make in terms of mitigating the corruption? I'm sorry, the environmental problems in New York City that it faces going forward?
Air pollution's top source in New York City isn't cars and trucks. People think that, but it's actually energy use in buildings, oil and gas use inside of the building and for the electric grid to power the building. So, reducing that energy use in buildings is the top challenge for reducing pollution at the pace and scale needed to avoid global climate catastrophe. Very heavy stuff. If the city and the world don't do these kinds of actions and implement these kinds of policies, we're cooked, literally. This city will potentially not exist decades or a century from now on that path.
What
So it's imperative.
what could happen, Pete? Say we don't do anything to mitigate this problem.
Well, on the current path, there will be about 5 feet of sea level rise within my children's lifetime. So that doesn't sound like much, maybe, but if you've ever been through a hurricane or a flood, you know how much inches matter. So think of 5 feet, what that would do. And that's the kind of consensus science. The people like James Hansen at NASA popularized global warming. He predicts much higher sea level rise than that. To dramatize it to you and drive home how bad all of this is, when I grew up in this city, there were about 15 days a year, 20 days a year of over 90-degree heat, really hot and humid, nasty day. That's going to be about 35 days per year by 2035. By 2050, it's going to be about 55 days per year, 2 solid months of over 90-degree heat and humidity in this city per year. That's how bad it's going to get. When I was a young guy, that kind of heat and humidity didn't really bother me. I didn't like it. But now I'm 51, and boy, it hits you like a dump truck when it's that hot. You know, it's a real health threat. People die from heat exposure. So that threat of extreme heat, more hurricanes, more rain, harder storms, sea level rise, all of those things at the same time are going to greatly exacerbate the problems that society faces. So, beyond that, imagine 10 or 15 or 20 feet of sea level rise. There's really no way to handle that with seawalls.
We've seen
No way.
what Hurricane Sandy did to parts of the city. So
Yeah.
you're,
Yeah, it's
you're
bad.
talking about more frequent occurrences just like that if we don't mitigate this problem.
Yeah, the problem is the ocean gets hotter, the air gets hotter, it holds more moisture and humidity. That creates the conditions for much harder storms. So it's not that there aren't storms already. There will be harder rainfalls, harder storms. So we saw the damage, like you say, of Hurricane Sandy. And that wasn't even a hurricane, it was a tropical storm when it hit. Imagine a Category 5 hurricane hitting New York City
Yeah,
compared to what Sandy did.
and that could happen.
That's what we want to avoid.
So you mentioned, once again, I follow you on X, and you've made Kathy Hochul, the governor, a focal point of your criticism around oil and gas.
Yeah.
Why is she doing what she's doing? And you think is it big real estate again that's influencing her?
You know, the oil and gas lobby, the real estate lobby, the large polluters, that create the bulk of the pollution throw enormous amounts of money and influence. And yeah, that's it. It's the money, the influence that those people have. That's funding Hochul's campaign. It pays for the jobs of her associates. Her husband even works for a firm, a law firm that represents the Williams Pipeline Company, for example. So there's a lot of conflicts there. And then there's the New York Post and Fox News crowd, which shrieks about this stuff like crazy, crazy people. And
Yeah.
so that influences, people as well. Kathy Hochul seems to like overvalue the opinions of the headline writers at the New York Post. Um, you know,
Yeah, she
that's who she listens to.
yeah, she was just on John Katzmatidis's program on ABC Radio. Yeah, another uh,
Yeah.
yeah, another right wing know nothing in my opinion. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what you're saying obviously is what I've been, championing for years, which is we have a broken political system, and our
Yeah.
campaign finance system is basically legal corruption, and it leads to things like this, which means that problems are not addressed because of big money influence in our political system. Now you also you also went after um, Controller Lander on the pensions stuff. Now, yeah, as I know a little bit about that business, I know obviously somewhat about pensions and pension plans, and under the fiduciary law or the fiduciary system, trustees um, must strive for maximum returns. And I know you've been critical of Lander because he has not divested from companies, money managers that invest in oil and gas. What do you say to the retirees, the beneficiary of pension plans that claim that if you divest from companies, money managers like BlackRock and company, you're hurting their returns on the pension system. Many of these pension plans are underfunded. So, what do you say to that? And why did Lander not act faster?
I don't know why it took Brad 4 years to propose something that then didn't pass because he proposed it at the last meeting. It's just really sad. Like we're yeah, that's no good.
Tell us about the substance of this. Why?
Yeah, yeah. So we'll get to the politics in a moment, but substantively, the city has about a $300 billion pension fund. As you know, there are 5 funds in there that serve municipal employees and retirees. It's an enormous pool of investment capital, and it's really important that the city manage that money properly, so that the returns are there, so that the taxpayers don't have to make up the difference and fund the shortfalls in the pension program. We're very lucky in New York. This isn't true of other places, but our pension systems are in pretty good shape, in large part due to state constitution provisions and just strong unions at the city and state level, making sure that the pensions are protected and funded properly by the government. So protecting that is really important. Oil and gas companies have had really bad returns over the last decade or two. And so, for a long hold pension system, you can see why a declining industry that is sunsetting isn't necessarily a good investment. It's a risky bet with potentially low risk, low returns, and high risk, especially on a multi-decade timeline. So, that's the fiduciary argument to divest from oil and gas. And in fact, the city has ended public markets, that is, stock and bond investments in big oil and gas companies. And that's something that's going to protect the pension fund in the long run. So the city divested about $4 billion worth of its investments from the likes of Exxon under Controller Stringer and Mayor De Blasio, and that's going to protect the pension funds over the long haul.
So,
But the bigger issue,
just
if you don't, yeah, sorry,
Scott was very good on this issue. Scott Stringer.
yeah, he was great. He was great. I mean, we had a real fight where a grassroots coalition pushed Stringer hard for years to divest from oil and gas. And, it was like we were pushing him hard. But he saw what, in the end, what made sense, did it, and became a fantastic ally on this set of issues to protect the planet and the pension funds.
So
And that's a concern too, you
he
know?
he was better than Brad on this issue, is what you're telling me.
Oh, vastly better. And, he actually led the world on this kind of an issue, along with de Blasio and Tish James and other trustees. The city did divestment from oil and gas, which was cutting edge. No huge fund, public fund of its size had done so at that point. The city doing it sent a huge global signal. And that freaked out the likes of the oil and gas industry, the Leonard Leo networks, BlackRock. And in fact, we were campaigning to push BlackRock to reduce its investments in oil and gas. For people who don't know, BlackRock is the largest investor in the world. It controls about $12 trillion. That's what it invests. So it's immensely powerful. It owns like 10% of every public company in the world. So it is massively influential.
That was your aim with pressuring or lobbying Brad, was to divest from BlackRock because of what you just said.
Yeah, what we want is for the city to shift prudently over time from dirtier money managers to cleaner money managers. So there's a lot of these big companies that can manage giant pots of money. BlackRock is the largest and also the dirtiest. They have the worst record on these issues. And so we don't think that which money manager you choose should be based solely on climate change criteria, but managing climate risk is an important fiduciary responsibility. So shifting over time from dirtier to cleaner creates an incentive structure for the likes of BlackRock to clean up their act by competing for New York City's business. New York City does about $60 billion worth of business with BlackRock alone.
Yeah.
So this is big, big money that can help induce the kind of change that the world needs while protecting the pension fund's interests.
Let me add that there are pension plans around the world, Pete, that have already divested from
Yeah.
oil and gas. I mean, by the way, I think the Canadian pension plans are better than the New York plans, because they depend less on money managers. They manage a lot of the assets in house, and they perform over time like 1 to 2% better than the New York City plans. I've always been a fan of devolving the pension system in New York City out of the controller's office and create what the Canadians have, a system that is quasi-independent and at arm's length from politics, and also to kind of revolutionize the way they handle money. But although, as you point out, it's a well-funded system here. We're kind of fortunate, unlike New Jersey, who and Illinois, that over the years underfunded their pension plans. But we could do better. We could definitely do better. Arm's length from politics is important, because we've seen a history over the years of controllers getting caught up in corruption over their stewardship of the pension plans. I can go down the list, Hevesy, even Nicholas Holtzman got jammed up with it. So we can do much better in terms of administering the plan. I was trying to push that when I was a commissioner on the Charter Commission in 2019, but obviously the status quo held, because there's a lot of folks that like to continue that as well. And let me also point out, I know you agree with me on this, that we are supporting Brad Lander over Dan Goldman, even.
Because, I'll take it.
because Dan Goldman doesn't really care about the genocide that's taken place and
kind of bought the seat with the family money. It's pretty gross. I mean, Sal, you've been fighting your whole career. It's an inspiration for these kinds of issues, and. You're right. It would be better if the pension funds reduced their reliance on big Wall Street managers. They can reduce that and save money over time. So that is part of the advocacy agenda we carry. And that's what Comptroller Levine ought to do. He should shift from dirtier managers to cleaner managers. He should continue prudent climate risk policies. And so, that's what we're pushing for. And, it's far-reaching stuff, but it's not particularly radical.
No, not at all. And by the way, all the arguments that you're making, Pete, are really common sense arguments. You have a lot of depth to your responses to big real estate, and you're not some sort of wild-eyed radical, that wants to immediately change things and cause all kinds of chaos. All the arguments that you're making are basically good for the people of the city, and are really not revolutionary. And it's so important because, as you pointed out, Fox and the Post, they poo-poo climate change, and I'm worried about it. I've got grandkids, and I'm worried about the future of the city, the future of the world, and you're one of the heroes out there. What about Mamdani, Mayor Mamdani, who I supported, and I believe you supported? Uh, what's what's your expectation for him when it comes to environmental issues?
We have high expectations, of course. NYCC was among his first endorsers when he launched his candidacy, so we were all in right from the jump. I'm one of the staff for New York Communities for Change, so of course I have my own opinions too. But on climate change, Mamdani has a real and good record. But before I get to that, just think worldwide. You're right to be scared. Imagine all the world's bread baskets failing at the same time because of droughts and extreme heat. Sea level is 10 feet higher. Extreme weather events are way more common. Right now, people are forced off their land in large numbers because of weather events and associated problems. So millions of people are forced to migrate because of climate change already. Imagine if it's tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people. That's what we're headed for and must avoid. So it's not like this is, an issue that I came to because I'm really into polar bears or something. It's because I read about it and got really freaked out. And so I had worked for a union for a long time. Good job, loved the union, good pay, all that, nice benefits. But oh my God, we're all gonna die is not really an exaggeration. It sounds insane. I'm waving my hands. It's crazy. It is crazy. It's very disturbing.
Yeah.
People should be disturbed by it. And so I'm hopeful that Mayor Mamdani will take action on climate change, just like he was doing in the assembly, where he was a real leader on this stuff. On Local Law 97, I'll tell you a story. Our friend Andrew Cuomo, he of the bought off corruption, when de Blasio passed Local Law 97, Corey Johnson was there for it, and Costa Constantinides, right? When they passed it, the real estate lobby really freaked. And so they got Cuomo to put an override into the state budget to override the law. And that became a really intense, 2-month long fight where that language was buried in the budget. We had to get it out. Zoran Mamdani actually played a crucial role in that fight because there was a hearing where Bill de Blasio testified in Albany. This was Tin Cup Day, where the mayors come up and rattle their change cups, right? So he testified. Mamdani was one of 3 legislators who used his time to ask the mayor, why is the governor trying to override Local Law 97? He gave the mic to the mayor to say this is a really bad idea and made clear that he opposed it. That hearing was critical to stopping Cuomo's push to gut Local Law 97 in the state budget that year. So, my man Mamdani also organized real opposition to the NRG fracked gas plant that was proposed for Astoria that would have also been disastrous. And so he has a real record on this stuff. He delivered on that. He's fighting for public power, and hopefully now he's going to kick ass as mayor.
Well, as you know, and I know, he hasn't been corrupted by the system. He was conflict free, right, as an assemblyman, and well, it's one of the reasons why I endorsed him at a press conference, is because he's not bought and paid for by all of the big money in this state. So I expect him to do some big things around the environment, and also hopefully affordability, which is
Absolutely.
which is a major issue. If he's able to pass, universal child care, that'll be a huge issue. By the way, New Mexico's already done that. New Mexico.
Yeah, totally.
Uh,
People talk about Mamdani as inexperienced, but he's young and energetic, and hasn't been captured by these interests, like you're pointing out. He doesn't have to call Rebney's president to check whether something's okay with them before he implements it. He
Mm,
doesn't have to do any of that. It's much simpler. He can just do what the people want.
yep, I agree with you 1,000%. I mean, I'm not a big fan of him, and I've said this to his team and put it on X that he kept Jessica Tisch, who's really not qualified to be the police commissioner, and I think it's going to create problems for him down the road. But generally speaking, I'm very enthused about his mayoralty, and I hope that he sticks to to his campaign promises around all of the issues that you just talked about, and the affordability issue is huge. Uh,
It's huge. And let me just say that on affordability, driving energy efficiency is part of making this city affordable. That's what reduces utility bills in the long run. So that's really important to do. And so we want him to fully implement and enforce Local Law 97. And we also want him to start taking on the city's small buildings so that it's in small building owners' financial interests to go off fossil fuels and go from oil and gas boilers, those old cranky beasts in your basement that just mine this morning went out overnight. That's why I didn't shave today. I've got this like little scruff here because I'm too much of a wuss to cold shave. But there it is. I'm a little ganky for this interview. But my point here is that it's time to get rid of that old technology and replace it with new, modern, energy efficient heat pumps. And the city should help pay for that and require it over time so that we get there.
that
That's what Mom Donnie should do.
Yeah, that's what I was pointing out. In other words,
Yeah.
giving some assistance to these small building owners to
Yeah. Yeah. Very valuable to do so. We think that the city should spend roughly $10,000 per 1 and 2 family homeowner to pay for the upfront costs of going to heat pumps and off fossil fuels. The upfront costs are higher than just replacing the old oil or gas boiler with a new oil or gas boiler. You got to install the heat pumps. That's a one time cost. But then you save money on energy efficiency. So, what we think is the city should help pay for that, tie that money to good job labor standards, which would employ steam fitter members in an area that is completely non union at this point. There's almost zero union work in small building renovation and construction and HVAC work. And we should change that as a city so that we create a good union jobs to clean up pollution and save people money.
I mean, you're obviously very articulate and knowledgeable about this stuff. Have you garnered union support for your efforts? Have you talked to unions that would be impacted?
Yeah. In fact, what I just described, a subsidy for small homeowners and small building owners to go off oil and gas and onto modern heat pumps tied to labor standards, that's supported by the steam fitters and the Central Labor Council, who we're working with, along with other allies, to try and convince the mayor and the council to begin that program in the coming budget. Allocate about $10 million this coming year to start that program and then grow that money over the years. And starting in 2030, make it illegal to go to replace an old oil and gas boiler with a new oil and gas boiler, because that locks in another couple decades of pollution and high bills. So, what we want to do is have the city subsidize that transition and require it. And the subsidies tied to labor standards is something that the unions support because it creates good union jobs.
That's a huge base of support. I mean, labor does play it's the only countervailing force to, big real estate in the city and in the state. If
Yeah.
getting,
Yeah. I mean, it's the only way working people have a real voice in this city besides a vote and activism is by being in an organized union as workers. And so, the evidence is there. That's real power. Of course, like unions aren't perfect. Some are great, some are good. But overall, it's tremendous. And you're right. It's a valuable alliance between us unions, environmentalists, other community groups, housing groups for that kind of action.
huge. One final, I know I'm keeping you too long. One final observation from you. What's your take on the new city council speaker to be? I mean, she hasn't been voted in yet, but it looks like she will be the speaker. Julie Menon. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think conventionally she's viewed as like not the progressive, where Crystal Hudson was sort of the progressive candidate. And, that's true. That's sort of how politics goes in tribal New York City politics. But I'm not sure that Julie Menon is, much worse or much better than Crystal Hudson. I'm pretty optimistic actually about it. And about her as speaker and just generally the political trend in this city because I think it makes political sense to make the city's costs go down and make it a better place to live. So I think she's pretty sharp, and has a real background in this stuff, including taking on big corporate interests. So I think
Is it?
it'll be the usual is the way I would put
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's just politics as it always is. This
yeah.
speaker, that speaker, you know.
But
What can I tell you? We just push,
isn't her husband a real estate guy? Big real estate guy?
He is. And so I think there's like speculation that because she's like rich and white and married to a developer type person, that she's automatically going to be against working people. But it's funny. I kind of almost see it the other way, which is that like because she's going to have like any speaker future political aspirations. She doesn't want to be that stereotype. She's going to want to pile up some accomplishments that really speak to this city. And so that's what I'm hoping happens, and she's got the skills to do it. So, let's go do it.
I
And she has a pretty good record on the issues I'm talking about. So let's rock.
I was a little pissed off that she did not endorse a Democratic nominee for mayor. She didn't endorse Doran, which to me was problematic. I also didn't think Crystal Hudson was just had a good organizing effort to become the speaker. I mean, obviously Julie Menon outflanked her, and I know how that works.
Yeah,
Progress.
and the council, right? Yeah.
It's all about committee assignments and campaign contributions. It has nothing to do with ideology for most of the men.
Yeah, I mean Hudson's been great on issues. She has a better record, than Menon did or does on the kinds of issues that I look at. That is, she's quicker to co-sponsor a bill that we support. She shows up to events and pushes, more than Menon does. So that's the kudos to her. I can't speak to whether she ran a good campaign or not. It's always hindsight is 2020. The winner looks like a genius and the loser looks like a moron. But I'm not. I just kind of casually called Crystal Hudson that, but that is not true. The point I'm making here is that, like, these are hard campaigns. We lose all the time. It's very hard. That doesn't mean you ran a bad effort.
Mhm.
The fact is, like, on Local Law 97, we are outspent gigantically, gigantically. And so, yeah, in co-op and condo boards, people are picking up that rhetoric that the real estate industry is throwing at them. But the politics overall, outside of co-op and condo board politics, are what they are, which is that action to create good jobs to fight climate change and reduce utility bills is hugely popular. And that's why Local Law 97 passed. We mobilized those politics. That's why New York City ended gas and new construction. And that's why we can continue to make progress under Mayor Mamdani, who doesn't have those financial conflicts. So that's where we hope to go.
One final point. How do we get average people energized around this issue? What are we doing? What are your groups that you're involved with doing to educate people about climate change in New York City and the things that have to be done to mitigate it? Average people, as you
Yeah.
don't really have that much expertise around this issue. What should be done? What are you guys doing?
Well, Sandy was NYCC's wake up moment because NYCC's membership on the Rockaways got clobbered. People are still not back in their houses from Sandy on the Rockaways over 10 years ago, and they're still not back in their houses. So, things are very, very severe on the ground in those kinds of communities. One of our leading activists lost everything to Hurricane Sandy. And she was recruited in shelter, where we were fighting for shelter recipients after Sandy. And so she's one of our leading mobilizers and activists on this issue. So that said, I think organizing is the old fashioned thing. It's always the same, whatever the issue is. It's one on one conversations, door knocking to get people involved and build an organization. There is no easy way around it. Social media is not going to lead to some sort of revolution in our favor, probably the opposite. Same thing with email. It's all about one on one conversations, building an organization, and using that to influence change. And so NYCC has thousands of active members, and that's where we derive our power from, people power. So to motivate people on this issue, I just point out how devastating the consequences are. That's the problem. And the opportunity, the solution involves creating large numbers of good jobs, reducing utility bills to go to clean energy and energy efficiency. So, like with lots of public interest issues, there's really good arguments for it. And there's really powerful opposition to change. So we try to educate people about politics and about the issues, get them motivated, and then they start coming out to rallies, lobbying their public officials, making phone calls. They become a crazy person like you and me.
Pete, thank you so much for making time for this enlightened conversation, and I appreciate you coming on. And
Likewise. Thank you so much, Sal. It's really appreciate everything you're doing. This has been really fun.
thanks, Pete. Have a great day. Thank you.
Cheers. You too.
Cheers.